Thank you everyone for joining today. So good afternoon, everyone. Like I said, thanks for joining us today for our webinar topic, load capacities and uses for timber bridges. My name is Cheyenne Stopford, and I am the Sales and Marketing Coordinator at York Bridge Concepts. If you didn't know a little bit about us, York Bridge Concepts, we're a full-service design build firm specializing in vehicular and pedestrian bridges focused on longevity, style, and craftsmanship. Our 8,000 bridges can be seen in almost all 50 states, as well as the Caribbean islands, Central America, and Europe. We create innovative crossing solutions for any environment. And a few things I just wanted to say before we start. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to add that in the comment section, as well as the Q&A. But please note, we will only answer those questions after the presentation. Before I will turn the presentation over to Titus, who is going to be leading us in our discussion today, we're actually going to start off with a little bit of trivia. All right, so we wanted to ask you all, what is the largest vehicle that YBC has designed a bridge for? And while you guys are jumping in on that, we will go ahead and bring Titus on. So today's presenter, as mentioned, is Titus. Hi, Titus. Thanks for joining us today.
Hello, Cheyenne. It's good to be with you today.
For those of you who don't know, Titus is our lead senior bridge consultant. He has actually sold over 300 timber bridge projects in his 18 years at York Bridge. He proactively works with his clients to provide customized crossing solutions for their projects.
We're delighted to have all of you with us today. Good to be with you, Cheyenne. I believe this is our third webinar that we've done this year, and I think we have a couple more coming up, don't we, Cheyenne?
Yes, we do, and we're super excited for those as well. We'll talk about that at the end of this presentation, but please feel free to, join us for our next presentations coming up. All right, so as you said, we wanted to do a little bit of a poll for you guys, and the question was, what is the largest vehicle that YBC has designed a bridge for? If you've answered the semi-trailer with crane, you are correct. The largest vehicle that YBC has designed a bridge for is a LR 1400 crawler crane, coming in at 248,000 pounds gross vehicular weight. Pretty crazy. Pretty crazy.
That's a pretty heavy vehicle there, Cheyenne.
Sure is, sure is. Wouldn't want to stand in the way of that, that's for sure.
I think people are probably a little bit shocked. Most people think, well, I didn't know a wooden bridge could do that. When they think about a wooden bridge, they think about a pedestrian boardwalk, or maybe a golf course where you have golf carts going over them. That's what people normally think about when they think about a timber bridge. But a timber bridge can hold heavy duty capacities as well. And so today we're going to be talking about the usage and the load capacities of a timber bridge. Cheyenne, if you ever saw any of the old Western movies, but typically in those old Western movies, they always show a railroad train going over a timber bridge. I think about the movie Two Mules for Sister Sarah with Clint Eastwood, and The Lone Ranger more recently with Johnny Depp and Arnie Hammer. And in both cases, they took dynamite and they blew up the bridges. By the way, don't do that to any of our timber bridges. But those were old timber trestle bridges that were built out in the West in the 1800s, and they're holding the weight of a train. Now, train locomotives are heavy. They can weigh 150, even over 200 tons. And then you think about the cars loaded and how much weight they carry. And those timber bridges were built to be able to handle those loads even back then, of over 400,000 pounds, much heavier than standard vehicular bridges that would be needed today. And they were made out of wood. So yes, a timber bridge can hold the capacity needed. And it's all about axle weights and spacings, more of which we're going to talk about a little bit later on. Cheyenne, I want to mention up front that I am not a structural engineer. York Bridge, we operate primarily in the private sector. We're not designing and building bridges that are going to be used on interstates or state highways. Most of these are in the private sector, but we can and do build bridges of all different sizes, shapes, and capacities. But what I want to do today is to keep the presentation very user-friendly. I want to keep it very practical and not get too overly technical. Yeah, there are going to be some technical parts of this, but we're going to try to keep it more practical from the capacity standpoint.
Sounds good. Let's go ahead and dive in, Titus. Sound good?
Yeah, let's do it. You know, every day, Cheyenne, being a national timber bridge company and being a bridge consultant for the company, every day I'm talking to a lot of different people from all over the country that have a bridge project. And typically they call up and they say, Titus, I've got a project and I need a bridge. Well, the first thing I want to talk to them about is the capacity of that bridge. What capacity or kind of bridge do you need? And most of the time, Cheyenne, people don't know. And so I have to talk to them about the usage of the bridge. And if we could go back to the previous slide, I want to note the interrelationship between the uses of a bridge and the capacity of a bridge. So I start asking the person, well, where is the bridge going to go? How is the bridge going to be used? And once you ask enough questions, you find out the usage of the bridge, then we can recommend the proper capacity of the bridge. And Cheyenne, it's always important to make sure that we've got the right bridge capacity for the right usage.
You are correct there. I have seen a couple instances where we actually have had people call in because the load capacity was not, I guess, let's say it couldn't withhold the cement truck that went over that bridge. So we definitely do our best to strive and provide the absolute best outcome for our clients.
Okay, in front of you is basically our outline for today. I'm going to talk very briefly about the usages of bridges, timber bridges, and then we'll talk about the load capacities. Under usage, we're going to talk about pedestrian and then vehicular. So let's first of all talk about the usage of a pedestrian bridge. Here you see in the next slide an example of a design and a picture of a standard timber pedestrian bridge. Obviously, the intent is to allow people to walk over a bridge. These are typically 6, 8, 10, 12 foot in width, and they're intended for pedestrian usage. Now, also pedestrian usage will allow for light duty, light maintenance vehicles to cross as well. And the next slide we're going to see shows a couple of examples of some bridges that we built. The one on the left is our cancer survivors boardwalk that we built up in Greenville, South Carolina. Top right is the same bridge. There on the left, you see all the people standing on the bridge. This is when they opened the bridge and had a dedication ceremony there in the town. And then the one on the right, we have gone back and added some additional finishes to the bridge. This bridge, pedestrian bridge, for people to use to walk down this hill and get into the park. The picture on the bottom right is our Carrollwood Village Park project built right here at New Park in Tampa, Florida. Again, you can see the people walking over the bridge, and it's to connect people from one side of the park to the other, crossing over the lake. So many bridges are intended for pedestrian use, and we can design and build bridges for that. Now, sometimes bridges, though, are for vehicular use. And by that, they're intended to have a vehicle drive over them. It could be that you have a golf course and need to get a golf cart or maintenance equipment over it. It could be that you've got a driveway going into a house, crossing a stream, and you need to have a single lane driveway bridge. It could be that you have a regular roadway bridge, 2-lane, that you need to get major vehicles over. So many times the use of the bridge has to do with vehicular traffic on some type of a roadway. We just built a bridge up in Charlotte, North Carolina for the Centene office building. And you'll see in the next slide some conceptual renderings of that bridge. Here we go, coming back to the vehicular usage, and you see the video playing of some of those vehicles going over. But here's the slide that we were talking about of the Centene Bridge. And this is a very interesting bridge when you talk about uses of bridges, because it shows a 3-lane vehicular bridge, and it's on a roadway. You see in the top right, this is a roadway that is coming in to a parking garage to be used by the employees for this office complex. And so we had to design a bridge that could handle heavy-duty vehicular traffic. That we're going to have 2,500 cars coming over every morning, 2,500 cars leaving every day. So we designed a bridge that could handle that load of traffic every day. So a bridge designed for vehicular traffic on this roadway. Now, going back to our main slide here, we've talked a little bit about the usage of the bridge. Now let's talk about, on the right side, the capacities of the bridge. First of all, we'll talk about pedestrian capacity, then light vehicular, standard vehicular, and specialty vehicular bridges, and that'll be our webinar for the day. Okay, let's start with the capacities of a pedestrian bridge. Again, intended for people to use, and normally the AASHTO loading required is 90 pounds per square foot. And the chart there on the left is an indication of how they come up with that, but basically they take an average weight of 160 pounds per person standing on a 2x2 foot square of a bridge, and you equate that to 90 pounds per square foot. The bridge on the bottom right is a pedestrian bridge designed for that 90 pounds per square foot. Sometimes, though, they want a little bit extra capacity depending upon the usage of the bridge, or if they're going to have something drive over the bridge. You see on the top right a pedestrian bridge, but it was designed for 100 pounds per square foot. Many times a pedestrian bridge will carry a dual loading. It's designed 90 pounds per square foot or 100 pounds per square foot for pedestrian use, but they may want to put like a little gator over it, or an ATV, or a small maintenance vehicle, and then they'll step up the bridge, or it may also carry a 2-ton or a 4-ton or a 5-ton type loading as well. So this is a standard pedestrian bridge loading, 90 pounds per square foot.
Now, I love this one, Titus, because a fun fact about this bridge here is it's actually in my neighborhood in downtown Tampa. And I was actually just there this past weekend, was kind of looking around and and this bridge withstands so many people on a daily basis, whether there's people on their scooters. I was actually one who was on a scooter, but people are, pushing strollers or riding their bicycles. And this bridge gets all of these bridges in here get so much foot traffic on a daily basis, and can say it's actually in fantastic shape and great condition. And actually, a fun fact for this bridge, on a good sunny day where the pond is, you can actually see quite a large gator in that body of water.
Well, very interesting. We only have about 1.5 million alligators in Florida, so about any body of water is going to have an alligator in it. But come on, Cheyenne, I know why you really went there.
Oh yeah? Why
yeah,
that?
you went there so that you could eat at Eulalie's.
Oh, you caught me. You caught me.
By the way, if any of you ever come to Tampa, Eulalie's, you can see that in the background. There's a wonderful, wonderful restaurant built by Richard Gonsmart, who also owns and runs the Columbia franchise restaurants as well. This is a great project, a good case study. It's the Waterworks Park that was built by the city of Tampa. And these two bridges, there are two of them, are pedestrian intended, and they cross over a little spring and a little waterway that leads out into the Hillsborough River. And one of them was built a little bit heavier duty capacity to be able to handle not only people walking over it, but also small vehicles going over it as well. So a perfect example of how these pedestrian bridges and loadings can work. The bottom picture on the right, you see some bollards that they have placed, and the intent there is to make sure that heavier vehicles don't get over the bridge or get onto the bridge that might damage it. And typically AASHTO requires or recommends that as the bridge gets wider, the capacity goes up to be able to handle small vehicles as well. Okay, now let's talk about some vehicular load capacities, and let's begin by talking about light-duty vehicular. Sometimes you've got a bridge that's going to take vehicular traffic, but it only is light-duty vehicles. And we refer to this as an H5 or an H10 type of loading. The diagram there on the left shows a truck and the axle weights and spaces that apply to these type of loadings. By the way, Cheyenne, the H stands for a vehicle with 2 axles.
I am writing that down.
And then the number after the H stands for the gross vehicular weight in tons. So an H5 bridge would be able to capacitate a 2-axle vehicle like a car or a regular truck that weighs up to 10,000 pounds. An H10, same thing, up to 20,000 pounds. So these are what we call light duty vehicular loads. The bridge on the right is a good example of one of these. This is an H5 bridge that we built in Charleston, South Carolina. By the way, this is at a BMW dealership, Cheyenne. Have you ever been shopping for a car?
You know, I have actually just recently, and that is a thing in itself. I'll tell you that.
You know, the first thing they do, they hook you up with a salesman and he takes you out, and guess what he does?
Gets to walk you around the whole parking lot.
He wants to show you all of the cars. Well, what happened was this BMW dealership out front, they had a very busy road. They had a very limited parking area for their vehicles. So they bought a car wash that was next door. The problem was splitting the car wash and the dealership was a canal. And so we had to build a bridge so that they could access the 2 areas and use them for car parking lot. So we designed and built this single lane H5 loaded bridge. Now, they weren't taking anything heavy over it. They just wanted to move cars back and forth between their car lots without having to go onto the major highway. So we built a 5-ton bridge and it allowed them to bring the cars back and forth. But then you see there on the left, Cheyenne, there's a separated section. Guess what that's for?
I'm going to guess the car salesman, for them to take all the people walking over to show the finest BMWs. Is that correct?
Exactly right. The car salesman could take people over, customers over, walk on the pedestrian section, and yet still be safe because there's a barrier between the cars that would be driving on the vehicular section. So oftentimes in this setting, maybe it's a private driveway, golf courses, you're building light duty bridges, H5 or H10 loaded, sometimes called 5-ton or 10-ton loaded bridges. Well, the next level of vehicular bridges we want to, well, first of all, we have a case study we want to talk about. And what a beautiful bridge, Cheyenne.
Absolutely. Now, can you tell us a little bit about where this bridge is located? It definitely doesn't look like it's in Florida.
It's actually in Howell, Michigan. And being a national timber bridge company, we built over 8,000 bridges. We have them all over the country. We have them in every state. This is in Michigan. And this is for a private residence. And you see the residence there in the back. And we built this 10-ton or H10 bridge as part of the driveway coming out of the front of the house. And it goes over this lake area that they had. And we built the bridge up in the air so they could get boat traffic underneath. Now, the design loading this bridge is an H10, 10-ton bridge. Up in the picture on the right, the corner right, you see the car driving over it. And that was the purpose of the bridge and how it's used. The residents can take their cars and SUVs and pickup trucks and they can drive in and out to get to their house or wherever they may need to go. It was designed H10 in case they might have had a FedEx or Amazon delivery truck, which also would fall into that weight limit.
Now, can I ask you, Titus, with that capacity, you know, let's say, God forbid, something were to happen that they need an emergency vehicle. Would that emergency vehicle be able to cross this bridge?
That is a great question, Cheyenne. And the answer is no. Now you're thinking, well, wait a minute. You can't build a bridge for a private driveway and not have fire truck access. What if the house were to catch fire, there was an emergency, and they had to get a big, heavy fire truck? Well, fire trucks weigh starting at about 56,000 pounds, going up to almost 90,000 pounds. They could not drive over that bridge, Cheyenne. But guess what? They had they had another point of access. What you don't see is around back, there was another drive area that they could bring in construction equipment or fire trucks or heavier duty vehicles, moving trucks, if need be. They didn't have to use the bridge for that. That was more for just the residents and their cars going over it. So a perfect example of where we built the right capacity bridge in the right setting for just the intended use of that bridge. All right, now we want to talk a little bit about the standard vehicular load capacities for timber bridges. And these are typically the 2-lane vehicular bridges that we would build on a roadway into some type of a residential or commercial development. The load rating is listed up there in the top left as an HS20 or an HS25. Now, the HS designation means it's a multiple axle. Remember the H? 2 axles. HS, now we have multiple axles. You have 3 axles or more. The diagram there on the left shows a standard semi-truck, and notice the axle weights and axle spacings, and this is how you determine the HS20 gross vehicular capacity. An HS20, if you add up 32,000, 32,008, that's 72,000 pounds. That's a standard roadway, highway, vehicular bridge loading. Now, this was a standard that AASHTO first came out with in 1944 as we were starting to see semi-trucks go over the road. And it worked very well for a number of years. And then later on, that same basic design capacity was increased, HS25. Now that's a 90,000 pound gross vehicular weight loaded bridge. And we built those, and we've even built an HS27 94,000 pound bridge. But here you see how that the HS design works. An HS20 is a standard vehicular load. Sometimes you may need, in certain cases, a little bit heavier duty, and therefore the HS25 comes into play. The picture on the right, Cheyenne, this is a good example of a heavy-duty vehicle coming over, and that's a dump truck. Normally, dump trucks weigh about 68, maybe up to 70,000 pounds. And this is our Esplanade at Siesta Key bridge that we built, 2-lane vehicular bridge. It's about 150 feet long altogether. It's a Taylor Morrison residential subdivision roadway that we built this bridge for. It's HS20 loading, and it can handle the capacity of normal roadway traffic. Cheyenne, one of my favorite pictures.
Absolutely, I can see why, because you are crossing over such a gorgeous view. Is this going to be the same Esplanade at the previous slide that we just saw?
You know, it is. Esplanade is used by Taylor Morrison for their upscale residential subdivisions. And this is another one that is down in Fort Myers, Florida. This is an HS20 capacity bridge, 2-lane vehicular bridge, and you'll see a couple of pedestrian sections. Notice the one on the left is 6 foot wide, the one on the right 12 foot wide, because it's multi-lane trail on the one side, a pedestrian on the other. But what you have going on here, Cheyenne, off to the right is the main highway, and people are turning into the subdivision. They come over the bridge and then enter into the residential section. So here's a bridge on a standard roadway in this private development, and it was designed and built HS20 capacity. Now, I also want to mention this to you. Standard weight load is 72,000 pounds, but these bridges typically will also hold, in most cases, up to 80,000 pounds. And what happened, Cheyenne? In 1984, the federal government allowed vehicles, semi-trucks, up to 80,000 pounds to legally go down the road. So any state or federal highway, you can go down the road with a truck that weighs up to 80,000 pounds. Now, anything beyond that has to be a special heavy duty permitted load. So this bridge was designed to handle regular roadway traffic, HS-20 design. And Cheyenne, what a gorgeous, beautiful bridge as people are entering into this subdivision.
Absolutely. So all those homeowners in there can feel very great about their Amazon packages being delivered safely.
That's exactly right. They can bring their semi, moving vans and everything that could go down the road under normal load. Now, sometimes we need to build a little bit heavier duty bridge. This is an example of an HS-25, 90,000 pound vehicular weight. This is actually up in New Hampshire, Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. By the way, Cheyenne, have you ever been to New Hampshire?
You know, that is one place on my list to go, and this picture is just even more inviting than ever.
If you ever go here. This is the famous landmark historic Mount Washington Resort Hotel. Over this stream, there was a concrete bridge set there for 50 years. We replaced it about 8 years ago with this beautiful 2-lane vehicular bridge. This is a single 80-foot free span design, and it is an HS-25. Now, the reason for the 25 instead of the 20 loading had to do with local requirements. And many times you have to meet whatever the town or the county loading may be. In this case, it was required to be an HS-25. Or sometimes it may be that they have heavier duty construction equipment that might need to go over the bridge and utilize it. In that case, we might have to build them to a heavier capacity. But York Bridge can and has built to the HS-20 and the HS-25 design as well. Well, another standard vehicular load capacity is the HL93. In 1993, AASHTO changed its design standards for bridges, and they came up with what's called the HL93, in essence replacing the HS-20, or not replacing, but recommending its utilization. And many state DOTs have adopted the HL93 standard. What happened was basically the HS-20 standard allowed for a truck as it moves over a bridge. It is a design truckload. In addition to that, what they added was a design lane load. You had to add on top of the truckload 640 pounds per linear foot. And so it is a greater design capacity. And the idea was heavier vehicles were going down the roads, multiple axle designs and weights and spaces. And so they wanted to come up with a design that could accommodate the type of trucks that were going over modern roads today. And York Bridge we have built HL93 design. Cheyenne, the picture on the right, another beautiful bridge. That's right here in Tampa, Florida.
Beautiful. I can see that, you know, just about every picture in Florida, there's some sort of body of water. And you can see at the bottom there, that little creek.
That's actually Rocky Creek. We actually have 3 vehicular bridges over that same creek. But this is the Bridge Haven subdivision. It's a Lennar townhome subdivision, and it's in Hillsborough County, which is where Tampa is here in Florida. But because of the way the subdivision was platted, the county required an upgraded design, the HL93 design instead of the HS-20 design. So we built it, 2-lane vehicular bridge that can accommodate vehicular traffic as needed in this setting. So those are standard vehicular load capacities that accommodates most normal roadways. But Cheyenne, sometimes you have to take something heavier over a bridge. Now, these are typically oversized loads, as you see here in the picture of this particular truck, and we refer to them as specialty load capacity bridges. York Bridge can and has built a lot of heavy duty bridges. Sometimes you may have a situation where you have a lowboy tractor trailer, like you see here. A lowboy is where you have a drop deck trailer instead of a box truck. You think about a semi with a box truck, you know, like they deliver things in. This is a lower deck so that it can carry large pieces of equipment or large materials. And these trucks can weigh much heavier than standard 72 or 80,000 or even 90,000 pounds. So special heavy duty bridges are required to be able to handle those. And we have designed and built a number of these. The diagram there at the right shows a crane going over a timber bridge, and you see all the different axles and spacings. And this is really the key to a vehicular bridge, the axle weights and the axle spacings, and we can accommodate whatever may be required.
I'm sure for those of you that already saw, I jumped ahead pretty quick, but as Titus mentioned, this is actually our heavy duty vehicular bridge case study. Titus, tell us a little bit about this. Isn't there a little bit of backstory that we did for a utility company in the area?
You're exactly right. And this is a wonderful case study. And we actually built 3 of these in this setting, all the same capacity. And we have more to build for a local utility company. Now, these are off-road. This is not public roadway. This is a off-road access for the utility company's usage to be able to not only maintain these high transmission power lines, but to be able to replace them. They had the need to get over a very heavy duty lowboy carrying a crane that weighed, well, it was actually over 76 tons. So you can see that's a lot heavier duty than those other standard vehicular bridges we were talking about earlier. And we were able to design and to build several of these bridges for their use. We've designed some bridges to be used in a mining operation, Cheyenne, and it's going to be able to hold big A35 Volvo dump trucks that have a rear axle weights of 90,000 pounds. So that's pretty heavy duty. So whatever the capacity required, we certainly can design it and we can build it.
Absolutely.
Well, we've talked a little bit about AASHTO standards, and York Bridge does meet AASHTO standards. We can design for whatever load capacity may be needed depending upon the use of the bridge, even heavy duty off-road special type bridges as well. And we've done it all, Cheyenne, in our 38 years, 8,000 bridges, pedestrian, vehicular. And we'd certainly be honored to design and build a bridge for anyone that would like to contact us.
Absolutely. Well, now that you know a little bit about everything that a timber bridge can do, thank you so much to Titus for tying in everything. So that way we have a little bit of more knowledge of, hopefully a lot more knowledge of the uses and capacities. Titus, do you have anything else to add?
Well, I think we're good. We'll take a few minutes. If any of them would like to ask some questions, you can, I believe, go into the chat or the Q&A and put your questions in, and we'll read and answer those. If anybody would like to, we'll be glad to try to address any questions that may come along.
Absolutely. And just additionally, we do have resources available on our website if you're interested in learning more about this topic. As mentioned, if you have specific questions, you don't necessarily feel like you want to ask them here, you're welcome to email me and I'll do my best to pass your information on to the right person. I did want to let you know, for those of you who have attended this presentation, it is not accredited. However, if you would like to get a certification of completion for your records, you can always email me at cstopford@ybc.com and I'll be glad to provide that for you.